Wait, we're putting the name on it.
Okay, so I told you guys yesterday, and I have this up on the screen if y'all want to move your desks around or whatever so that you can see it more comfortably. I do like to sit in the pods and the groups sometimes, and I like to kind of sit in circles. Sometimes I like to break it up. But anyway, hopefully that was enjoyable for you today. Anyway, what we have here is we have a top scoring essay. And I believe I told you guys yesterday that this first essay here is actually an 8. Okay? And I know that a lot of you are surprised because there are some grammatical errors and some very obvious errors. For instance, you know, she didn't even complete, or I say she, I don't know who it is, she or he. Whoever wrote this didn't even complete the date and missed part of the title. Okay? And that is okay because you're writing a full essay in a 40-minute block. And in that 40 minutes, you also have to read, you also have to annotate, analyze, and develop some sort of an understanding about what's going on in the prompt. All right? If you understand what the prompt is asking you to do, and it's always asking you to do something that is a level more complex than you anticipate, okay? It's more than just understanding the passage. It's understanding the author's purpose or why the author is doing something in the passage. And then explaining what that author is doing to your audience. All right, so in this case, we know that Jennifer Price, she is really looking at the idea of this plastic pink flamingo as a symbol of something, okay? And what you choose to, say that she is symbolizing may vary. But as long as you fully develop your paragraphs and support that, that does not matter. You know, if you're close to the target, different people are going to word it different ways, and your readers are going to expect that. You know, if one person were to say that she is saying that Americans are bold, that they obscure nature, if they choose this to be their symbol of rebirth, like the phoenix rising from the ashes as they rose from the Great Depression. Any of these things would absolutely be acceptable. All right? So what we need to do here is we need to determine, first and foremost, does this author know what on earth Jennifer Price is doing? Okay? And then does she effectively analyze that, naming her devices? And the reason that I'm like, make sure you highlight your device, what device you've mentioned, because a lot of times students won't mention a device, and that makes you actually summarize, and you're not going to make a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 if you summarize. You're going to make a lower tiered score. Okay, so ultimately, when I am grading a paper, and I grade holistically, I will grade your first few essays for everything, but then when you do your journals outside of class, I will start grading them holistically. When I do this, I start with kind of an idea in my head of what I'm looking for, okay? I am looking for 2 good warrant statements per paragraph, minimum. Hopefully you have 3, all right? Sometimes the last statement is combined with the previous, that's fine, okay? If you have 3 pieces of personal analysis per body paragraph and a good claim in your introduction, you're going to make an 8 or a 9, okay? So imagine if you highlight your claim in pink, and then you have paragraph number 1 that has 2 really solid warrants, paragraph number 2 has 2 really solid warrants, and then you just tear it up on paragraph 3, and you've got 3 things that just really stand out, then I'm going to give you a check for each of those things. So that's 8 checks, which would be an 8 paper. Does that make sense? All right. Whereas if you're summarizing but you're not analyzing, I'm not going to give you a check. So ultimately, the more green that you're going to have on your paper is going to equate a higher score. Does that make sense to you guys? All right. So let's look through this first paper. All right. In rereading it, I'm going to reread it again. In her 1990 blank, because she left it out, essay, The Plastic Pink Flamingo, which she left out, A Natural History, Jennifer Price does provide a brief history of the flamingo, both plastic and live. Now, if I'm sitting here and I'm a table grader and I'm checking this paper, I'm going to already start making some assumptions about this paper based on the fact that whoever wrote it was careless with the date and the title. Okay? Luckily, whoever wrote this really rallies and starts pulling it together. But you can tell by the amount of green that it takes her a while, or him, see? So as this person moves in onto the second page, they're really getting a handle on what's going on. And that's okay. You can write yourself into a higher score. And that's what this student has done. All right, so she started out, or he, kind of slow, but then the pace really kind of picked up. All right, yet she does more than merely describe a bird. Okay, so we recognize that she's doing something more. This author recognizes she's doing something more than describing a flamingo. Rather, her word choice, tone, and use of examples create a far more significant insight, analysis of American culture and the American mindset. All right, we understand from this that she understands what Jennifer Price's purpose is in writing this. She is analyzing American culture and the way Americans think. That is worthy of a check. All right, we have a strong claim in that intro. All right, the essay begins with a sense of excitement created by the very active verb splashed. So very active verb, that's a device. Splashed is our evidence, our data. And an equally striking adjective, that again is the device. Boldness is the data. Indeed, she begins the piece in a bold way. Her analysis, however, becomes anticlimactic when she states the two major claims. Okay, this is very weak in terms of a warrant. All right, she needs to go back and tell us exactly how this is bold. She starts doing that, but then she starts transitioning to her next example. It's a little weak, but I'm still going to give it a check because she still does try to provide a little bit of analysis. All right, essentially, at face value, she argues that the pink flamingo was popular because it was a flamingo and because it was pink, which is also evidence or data. This intentional use of the obvious, that's our device, established by the second line, even emphasized with italics, already lays the foundation for her opinions on American culture. The fact that this object became popular for these reasons reveals the ways in which the collective American mind forms its desires. That's her personal analysis and commentary. And this is probably the best thing she's written so far. All right, that's worthy of a check. So if she had stopped right here, she would probably get a 3. And we have 3 checks. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay, moving forward. The remainder of the opening paragraph simply establishes background about the flamingo. After that, though, the author continues to give indications of what she thinks of culture in the United States. Her argument that Americans use flamingos to reveal prosperity, a point that she raises with more very active language, and this is analysis. This is not directly stated in the passage. She is inferring this from the language inscribed and emphatically. Is especially important notion following the Great Depression appears to be a valid interpretation. The examples used are important. Price does appeal to authority in some ways by quoting from 2 well-known authors. In her other examples are more telling. She cites a gangster, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, in his hotel, again that's evidence, data, as basis for the striking nature of the flamingo, and when explaining the popularity of pink, she brings up Elvis. Thus, flamingos became popular across the U.S., or to use her simile, cropped up like a line of semiotic sprouts, because of these sites with which Americans were familiar. While there may be a sound basis for this movement, such as post-depression affluence, again, that's not mentioned in the text. She's analyzing, she's bringing that in. Price goes beyond that. These examples show that American culture is trendy, that American purchasing patterns are based on those of public figures. Even the Anne Marling's quote she chose reflects that. Americans bought pink because it was the cool thing to do. This is all analysis of the examples that she has given us. This is really, her writing is getting stronger as she goes. Ever more telling that Price's selection of quotes and examples is the tone she uses selectively but effectively. Her sarcasm is quite strong in the standalone fragment in line 15, but no matter. The Americans nearly wiped out this bird, but that was unimportant to them. This surely contrasts with both generic sentiment and especially her scholarly audience. It therefore reflects what she thinks Americans find important. Things that defied conventional wisdom and morally were non-issues. Later in the essay, she asks a rhetorical question. Besides entertaining the reader, she uses this device to further underscore the importance of the color pink. Price then illustrates the further absurdity of making the plastic bird unnecessarily brighter than the real bird. This leads her to the conclusion that it is no wonder that the bird stood out in a brighter form outside of this natural environment. Here we have the best thing that she has written. Very strong analysis. She is in no way summarizing, and I want you to look at how small her incorporation of that data is. She is only using the pieces that she needs. She's not like copying multiple sentences. It's just the parts that she needs. All right. Up here, it's just sections of sentences, cropped up like a line of semiotic sprouts. She brings up Elvis. So we have a lot of summary, a lot of paraphrase, and a lot of smaller quotes. All right. So ultimately, she understands, and she is able to pick out devices and explain how those devices work to demonstrate what the author is saying about our culture. And that's a good paper. Even though we have those little lapses in diction and some grammatical errors here and there's a sentence fragment, okay? But she wrote it in 40 minutes. It's understood that that's a rough draft. All right, so paper number 2, let's just look at what we've highlighted, all right? Paper number 2 starts out stronger, all right? The 1930s was a dark period of time in American history. The mere mention of this decade evokes depressing memories from the generation that was born during the Great Depression and grim recollections from the veterans of World War II. However, Jennifer Price, in her essay, The Plastic Pink Flamingo, A Natural History, asserts that it was these years that marked the beginning of the popularity of the flamingo. Price crafts her essay by setting up contrasting images and detailed examples to emphasize her view of a culture that continually attempts to distinguish itself and its infatuation with Florida. Okay, that claim, I think, is stronger than the claim in the previous paper. All right? This is a very nicely developed introduction. But after that, it goes down south. Because body paragraph number 1, all of that yellow is data and very little warrant. Very little personal connection. Okay? Moving on to body paragraph 2. 1 example and a very short warrant. Okay? So you know how I'm always like, you got to have 2 pieces of evidence per body paragraph? This person does not have 2 pieces of evidence per body paragraph. There's just 1 in both of those. And then on the back page, we have multiple examples. All right? And ultimately, this is the strongest of her body paragraphs. But this essay only earned a 6, even though it had that great intro and this good ending right here. Notice that the conclusion is 1 sentence. That's really okay, to be honest. Okay? But anyway, definitely get a check for that claim. Get a check for the little bit of warrant we have, because it is warrant, it's not summary. And we have 2 here, and ultimately, she knows what she's talking about. This paper got a 6. So you can usually figure it out based on what you've highlighted. All right, so looking at the last one, the last paper, she tries to make a claim, but it never really happens. All right, we have a whole lot of data included, and we have kind of some weak warrants. Price reveals that she views the U.S. culture as being ironic because the good covers up the bad. Okay, that can be much more fully developed. All right, she can give us another example of irony and develop that. Granted, because she explains that they're ironic and why, that's not summary, so that's check-worthy. All right? Moving on, the culture of the U.S. is very easily influenced. That's not directly stated in the passage. You know, that's something that this writer has ascertained on her own, so that's check-worthy, although it could be a lot more well-developed. And then the U.S. culture has appealed to others as she views it as being easily influenced. Again, that is her. That's not directly stated, but this got a 3. And there's really only 3 things that are done well. So generally, your number that you're going to score coincides with how many times you do something well in the paper. Okay? A really solid claim, warrant information. That's where you're going to get your points. Does this help at all? Do y'all understand this? Okay? So what we're going to do is the next time you guys write a paper, which is going to be next week, sorry to tell you that, is you're going to bring it to class and you're going to have your classmates go through it and check it after you've highlighted it. All right? And when I grade it, I'm going to give it a number, but I'm also going to grade it for everything else. Just so we can kind of ease into doing this, because over the course of the year, we will move from grading it for everything which is how I'm grading your first few papers, to grading your papers holistically. All right? And it's in your best interest because your grade usually is higher when it's done holistically, because a 9 is a 100, an 8 is a 98, a 7 is a 95, a 6 is a 90, a 5 is an 85. Like, they're pretty high. All right? So does this make sense to you guys? Okay, look at your body paragraph. Do you have at least 2 things that are green in that body paragraph? Do you have at least 2 things that are green? Yes. Okay. Read what you've highlighted and make sure it is not summary. Is it summary?